Just in, Ford replied to Trump's tariffs by leaving the U.S., and no one saw this coming. A quiet move in Washington just set off a chain reaction at America's oldest automaker. What's next could shake the U.S. car market to its core.
Let's get to Ford. American-bred Ford now on the hunt for real estate, possibly outside the U.S. Ford announcing it is going to move the manufacturing of its Focus and its C-Max from Wayne, Michigan to a new location.
This isn't just about trade policy, it's about whether your next vehicle gets built in Detroit or somewhere a lot further away. Join us today as we uncover a quiet move by Ford that could flip the American truck market on its head. Stick around to the end to find out why in 2025, Built in America might be the most misleading label on the lot. The chaos began with a policy announcement that landed like a wrecking ball. On March 26, 2025, President Trump invoked Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, triggering sweeping new tariffs on the U.S. auto sector.
We're going to charge countries for doing business in our country and taking our jobs, taking our wealth, taking a lot of things that they've been taking over the years.
That meant a 25% tax on imported vehicles and parts from Mexico and Canada. Another 10% were slapped on Chinese components. The goal? Reclaim American manufacturing. The result? Panic inside the very factories that make American cars. For Ford, it wasn't political, it was existential. Nearly 60% of the parts in a US-built Ford come from Mexico or Canada. We're talking transmissions from Hermosillo, steel and aluminum from Ontario, and wiring harnesses that cross the border 7 times before assembly. One broken link and the whole machine halts. And that's exactly what happened. Analysts warn that the tariffs alone would add $2,000 to $4,000 to the cost of a single vehicle. Ford's internal numbers back that up. Absorb the cost, and it bleeds billions. Pass it on, and your average Ford Edge jumps from $38,000 to $42,000. A Mustang Mach-E crosses $60,000, and that's before interest. Imagine walking into a dealership tomorrow and realizing the same car just jumped $4,000. Would you pay it or walk away? But here's where it gets personal. The pain didn't hit boardrooms first, it hit suppliers. Towns like Romulus, Michigan and El Paso, Texas saw cuts almost immediately. Not from Ford directly, from the small plants that feed Ford's supply chain. Places with no media coverage, no protests, just silence and pink slips. Seen your local plant shrink? Know someone who lost hours or shifts? These quiet layoffs aren't just numbers, they're happening in towns like yours. That's how collapse starts, quietly. The phrase "Built in America" still sells trucks, but here's the truth no one says out loud. There is no 100% American car, not even close. Ford, Chevy, Tesla, every vehicle on the lot is a jigsaw puzzle made from global parts stitched together across dozens of borders. A modern vehicle has over 30,000 components, many of which are made in over 40 countries. Even a Ford assembled in Kentucky might still be 50% foreign under the hood. Surprised? Most folks are. Think your average American-made truck is actually American? Pop the hood. Check the label. You might be driving global without even realizing it. That's not laziness, that's just logistics. Some transmissions can only be made in 2 places on Earth. One in Japan, one in Mexico. Some EV sensors come only from Germany. Over 60% of EV batteries are made in China. This system wasn't built to be patriotic. It was built to be fast, cheap, and ruthlessly efficient. So when tariffs raise costs overnight, Ford can't just make it here.
They had the same footprint we did. That would be 15 more assembly plants in the U.S. and 4 million more vehicles produced in the United States, and that's what the president wants.
That's like telling someone to rebuild a skyscraper without glass, steel, or elevators. It sounds good until you try it. The result? Prices surge, margins crumble, and jobs quietly bleed out one by one. That's why Ford CEO Jim Farley walked into Washington like a man running toward a fire. No press, no camera crew, just a blunt warning. These tariffs could dismantle what's left of the American car business. And while Washington talks nationalism, China moves fast. BYD, China's electric juggernaut, outsold Tesla last year. Their supply chain remains untouched by tariffs. While Ford delays EV launches, China builds battery factories. While US suppliers flinch, Chinese competitors fill the gap. It's not just about lost sales, it's about lost time. In this industry, whoever moves fastest wins. That's why the damage is deeper than sticker shock. It's systemic. Right now, EV plants in Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky, and Tennessee are already scaling back. These were supposed to be the future, state-of-the-art factories backed by billions in investment. But they were built on the assumption that trade with Mexico and Canada would stay stable. That lithium, semiconductors, and batteries would keep flowing from reliable partners. The tariffs didn't just raise costs, they broke the foundation these plans were built on. And the cracks are spreading fast. A Ford Explorer that cost $44,000 last year now crosses $48,000. Stellantis just laid off 900 U.S. workers after idling plants in Canada and Mexico.
The company says that this move is an attempt to navigate President Donald Trump's new round of 25% automotive tariffs. Here's what we know.
Jaguar, Land Rover, and Audi, they're pausing U.S. exports entirely. Analysts at CNBC project $100 billion in losses across the industry in the next year. But that's not the worst of it. The real damage is happening in the towns that don't trend on Twitter. In Ohio, Ford's new battery plant is only half started. In Michigan, shifts are getting shorter and inventories are stalling. The media calls it market adjustments. But to the guy working weekends to cover a rising car payment, it's not a macro trend, it's his life. Feeling this where you live? You're not imagining it. And here's the scary part. While America's tied up in politics, other countries are quietly taking over the future. Germany's locking down EV supply deals. South Korea's buying lithium mines. China controls 75% of battery material processing. They're not waiting, they're exploiting. Meanwhile, foreign automakers like Toyota, BMW, and Hyundai aren't facing US tariffs from their home governments.
Can get a subsidy whenever they sell a car. We're also talking about they're getting cheap land leases from the government. They're getting cheap loans from the state-owned banks.
They're increasing US market share while Detroit scrambles. This isn't just a blip, it's a power shift. Trump's team says this is a necessary shock to bring jobs home. But history shows when an industry breaks, it doesn't always rebuild. Ask steel towns. Ask camera factories. If you've ever driven past an empty factory lot and thought, what happened here? This is what happened. Stick with us because we're connecting dots no one else is. Power doesn't wave goodbye, it just moves. And when it's gone, it doesn't leave a note, it leaves silence. A factory that doesn't reopen. A model that disappears. A job that never comes back. Ford knows this. That's why Farley made the trip, not for politics, but for survival. Because every plant idled, every supplier cut loose, pushes them closer to the line where moving production overseas becomes not a threat, but a solution. This isn't hypothetical, it's a map being redrawn in real time. What most folks don't realize is that the decision to leave doesn't happen with a bang. It happens after 10 quiet boardroom meetings, after one too many pricing models comes back red, after one more week of political uncertainty. A shift cut here, a line paused there, and one day the plant is just gone. That's how it starts. If you're watching this, you're not most people. You're paying attention while it still matters. That $50,000 SUV, that's not just inflation, that's tariff math. That empty dealership lot, that's what a fractured supply chain looks like. And if you think this ends with Ford, think again. This pressure is already building in food, housing, energy, and healthcare. Quiet moves behind closed doors. And every one of them will feel normal until they don't. So what can you do? First, stay informed. Watch Ford's earning calls, not just their commercials. Second, don't get caught flat-footed. If you're thinking of buying, consider how delays or price hikes might affect your timing. And third, pay attention to where your car is really made, not just assembled, sourced. Because that's where this story goes next. What do you think? Is Ford bluffing or are we watching a slow-motion exit from American soil? Drop your take in the comments and hit subscribe for more straight talk analysis on the auto industry, policy moves, and what it all means for real drivers like you.